I trained O with confidence, faced a shrieking HOA Karen, outsmarted her with city permits, and got her removed from the board. To initiate the narrative, some context about me is necessary. I volunteer to train and raise service dogs. My fiancé consistently mentions that I have a demeanor that suggests I am weak and easily pushed around. I frequently encounter confrontational individuals who are unprepared for my replies when they confront me. I had served in the military for 17 years at that point, during which I was responsible for overseeing over 130 service members, so I am far from being a pushover. I interact with civilians, which has led me to develop a courteous facade due to previous feedback, indicating that I appeared unapproachable and intimidating to my civilian counterparts. As I previously mentioned, I raise service animals and thus fall under the Americans with Disabilities Act regarding regulations about where I can go and what I can do with my puppy. Let's refer to him as O. O is an exceptionally well-behaved 6-month-old black Labrador. I have established a significant level of trust and obedience with him, allowing me to have him sit calmly while other dogs are present. As long as I am within sight, he will remain in place. I have raised several pups by that time, and I would never have attempted this with them, but O is remarkably well trained, and I eagerly anticipate having him back after his time assisting Mrs. C in gaining independence. One Saturday, I encountered the Homeowners Association, HOA, member while my fiancé, O, and I were preparing for a road trip to visit my fiancé's parents. One of the last tasks on the list of preparations is always ensuring that the pets use the bathroom before embarking on a long journey. We headed out, and O took care of business while I grabbed a bag to clean it up. I placed him in a sit-stay position and handed the leash to my fiancé. I proceeded toward the trash can, which was about 100 feet away from where he relieved himself. I had a clear line of sight to O, who was sitting attentively and watching me closely for hand signals or verbal commands. As I walked, I heard a high-pitched outburst from a woman. I couldn't quite make out what she was saying, but it sounded quite angry. I chose to ignore it and continued my way to the dumpster to dispose of the waste bag, then turned back to my 2 favorite companions. It was then that I made eye contact with the HOA member, who I will refer to as Karen. She is your stereotypical HOA member, not taller than 5 feet and with a comparable width. The short haircut she sported gave off a strong, "I am the manager now" vibe. She looked me directly in the eyes, and I finally paid attention to her shrill proclamation of, "Your dog must be on a leash and in your hand. My county law mandates it, and I will call the police." I do not tolerate ignorance, and respect is a two-way street. I was prepared to de-escalate the situation since my fiancé owns the condo and tends to be particularly non-confrontational. For her sake, I aimed to bring the discussion back to a civil tone. In a polite yet assertive manner, I inquired whether she had even glanced at the dog before starting her tirade. Once again, she emitted a banshee-like wail, leading me to repeat my question. This exchange of words happened 3 or 4 times, with me remaining calm while she grew increasingly agitated in both pitch and volume. At this point, I felt no obligation to offer respect in return, as she had provided none. I switched to my authoritative voice, loud and firm, making it clear that I was done with her unreasonable behavior. I explicitly informed her that if she had taken just 2 seconds to look, she would have noticed the dog sitting calmly on a leash being held by someone. She ceased her shouting, glanced at me, and became slightly red in the face, mustering up a response of, "You could just say thank you." I curtly replied, "Shut up and get out of my face." She quickly waddled away, tail between her legs, and retreated into her condo. My next encounter with her occurred while I was grilling, as the HOA has rules against charcoal grills, smoking, and barbecuing. Though I hail from the north, I have lived in the South since I was 2, thanks to being a military child. There is a distinct difference between barbecuing and grilling. Barbecue entails smoking with hardwood coals for over 12 hours, while grilling simply means cooking meat on a grill rather than a stove. The HOA had sent out a reminder prohibiting barbecuing on the premises and the use of coals, which prompted me to think, great, I'll just use a small propane grill. It's not barbecuing, but it's better than nothing. While I was grilling, I once again heard her familiar banshee-like call. She did not approach me to speak but resorted to shouting. I looked her in the eye and firmly told her, "Shut up and go away. If you utter one more word, I will be the one calling the police for harassment by an HOA member. She stammered something about prohibitions on grilling and open flames, and I told her to leave me alone and to show me the rules in writing from someone other than herself. She waddled off, and soon after, I was approached by the HOA president, who presented me with the HOA bylaws for me to review. While I was reading, my fiancé struck up a conversation with them regarding another issue we were facing. She was in the middle of addressing concerns with the state attorney's office about certain charges they were attempting to impose on her. The situation was not going well for the HOA, and she seized the chance to introduce herself. Although she generally avoids confrontation about minor matters, she stands up for herself when it counts. With her introduction, the tone of the conversation shifted dramatically, and they became exceedingly polite. Karen attempted to position herself as a victim, claiming I was rude and could use better manners when engaging with others. I appreciate my soon-to-be wife. She allowed Karen to weave her narrative of victimization. Once she finished, my fiancé looked her in the eyes and said, "You know, I was the one holding the leash and standing right here when he was grilling. So you received the same respect that you offered." Karen turned pale and faded away. It was then that the HOA president informed me that I could not use the grill and that I could face fines, warning me that next time he would be the one calling the police. I acknowledged him and continued. Enforcing regulations is part of my job in the military. I spend substantial time reading instructions, and nothing makes me happier than shoving the regulations in the face of difficult individuals to ensure my guys receive what they are owed or to compel them to perform their responsibilities correctly. So, if they want me to follow the rules, I certainly will. I began my investigation and uncovered some intriguing details. 1. No HOA bylaw can be enforced unless it is documented in the state database. 2. This particular HOA's bylaws were last updated in 1994, yet it was 2016. 3. They claim to adhere to my county's fire code, which aligns with the National Fire Protection Association regulations. 4. Finally, I discovered the exact latitude and longitude coordinates of the HOA's property lines. I obtained access to the state database and printed the HOA's bylaws, as well as the NFPA regulations indicating that, in a multifamily residence, propane tanks must not exceed 2.7 liters, with a cumulative maximum of 5.4 liters. I visited Lowe's to purchase a tape measure and stakes. Using Google Maps, I delineated the HOA boundary line. To my surprise, I discovered a drainage ditch that was city property less than 10 feet away from where I was grilling. Armed with my coordinates and stakes, I carefully marked off the city property section. Now came the time for revenge. I contacted the city-county fire departments to request a permit for grilling on the city property. They informed me that I could proceed without a permit, but upon my insistence, they issued an event permit for an open flame, costing me $50, so in total, I spent $100 for permission to grill there for 6 months. The following day at 7:00 a.m., I went to set up. Ensuring I was 3 feet into the city property, I set up my cooler loaded with enough meat and beverages to grill for an extended period. I waited for the inevitable response, which did not take long. Karen soon came rushing over to me, screaming. I was merely 10 feet from the community pool and just 3 feet from the sidewalk gazebo leading to it. I recorded her outburst on my phone and calmly informed her that there was no need for her to shout, as I was not breaking any laws. She continued to scream about the prohibition on grilling, expressing her frustration with me and threatening to get me arrested and evicted if that was her last achievement. She expressed her long-standing disdain for me, waiting for the moment she could oust me. I kept my composure, which seemed to infuriate her, prompting her to try to grab my belongings. That was a clear boundary. As she reached for my cooler, I summoned my authoritative voice and warned her that if she so much as touched my property, I would remove the offending limb with any necessary force. This caused her to skedaddle once more. Approximately 20 minutes later, I noticed 2 police vehicles approaching, with the HOA president himself coming along. He seemed particularly friendly with the officers, and as they approached, I overheard him tell them about me, asserting that I had already been warned not to grill on HOA property. He stopped about 10 feet from me, with one officer remaining beside him while the other walked toward me. I could hardly suppress the grin on my face as I eagerly anticipated the conversation. The officer seemed slightly taken aback by my cheerful demeanor as I asked, "What seems to be the problem, officer?" He informed me that I was in violation of the bylaws, had already received a warning, and that I would be receiving a ticket for disturbing the peace due to threatening the HOA while they were attempting to enforce the rules, as well as tickets for illegal open flames and unlawful storage of flammable materials. Finally, he warned me that if I did not pack up, I would be arrested and removed. Once he finished, I handed him my city grilling permit. He took it, returned to the HOA president, and they conferred briefly before he came back to me, stating that I could not obtain a permit from the city to grill on private property. I then presented him with the coordinates for the HOA and showed him the Google Maps grid and my current GPS location. I was smiling as I handed him sheet after sheet of documentation, realizing that the grid wasn't on a single sheet and included addendums. It took about 4 minutes to explain everything to him. Just as I was about to give him more information, he raised a hand to stop me. With a smirk, he asked how long I had been planning this. I replied, "Oh, about a week," which prompted a skeptical glance from him, but he moved on. He then inquired whether I had threatened Karen. I played back the recording for him, and by the end he remarked, "Nothing seems out of place here. You are free to go." I then asked if I could file a complaint against the HOA for harassment through him. He stated that no, I would need to go through the city clerk's office for that, but he would document the harassment on their part and file a report for me. In my state, it is illegal for an HOA to harass individuals, carrying penalties of several months in jail, fines up to $5,000, and immediate removal from the board, along with possible damages recovery. I opted for the removal of both individuals from the board instead of filing a complaint. I waved at Karen every day I grilled or showed her the leash if I had O with me. Story 2. Studying abroad, I find out my boyfriend dumped me for his manager right after I sacrificed everything for him. How could he? My boyfriend of 3 years emotionally betrayed me with his 33-year-old manager while I was studying abroad. I feel profoundly hurt and need guidance on how to move forward. 5 months ago, I, a 23-year-old female, chose to study overseas as part of a student exchange program in Europe. This decision meant entering into a long-distance relationship with my partner, a 25-year-old male, since we were both living in Asia at that time. He expressed significant displeasure, stating that long-distance relationships never work, and when I inquired why, he explained he had physical needs, which I attempted to come to terms with. Nevertheless, we agreed to make it work, and he wrote me letters and presented me with a gift, a shirt that read, "I love my boyfriend," before I departed for my studies. 2 months later, I struggled to adjust as well as I had hoped and began experiencing homesickness. Additionally, I found it challenging to make friends and felt isolated by my classmates. I called him to share my feelings, crying on the phone, but he simply said he was busy. This profoundly upset me because he previously would have dropped everything to comfort me. We ended up having a significant argument, but after expressing my feelings, we somewhat resolved the issue, and he promised to improve his communication with me. A week later, he informed me that he found affordable flights to Europe and was considering visiting me, which made me incredibly happy, as I had always wanted him to come, and it could be a chance to repair our relationship. However, he suddenly became hesitant about coming, resulting in yet another argument. Ultimately, he booked the flights to visit me. I believed everything was fine as he continued to send me kind messages, and I genuinely thought our relationship was stable. However, on the eve of his visit, he became infuriated over a minor issue, abruptly turning against me, calling me disgusting and declaring that he no longer wanted me in his life. He also claimed he didn't love me anymore and didn't even like me as a person. This took me by surprise, especially since only an hour earlier, we had expressed our love for each other. Given that this was not the first instance of him turning his back on me, I attempted to de-escalate the situation by apologizing and explaining that things were not as they appeared. I called him multiple times, but he did not answer. Eventually, he communicated that he wanted to end our relationship and would not be visiting anymore. He canceled the hotel reservations and became essentially unreachable, leaving me with no means of contacting him. He blocked my calls on FaceTime and deleted my contact information. I found myself bewildered, isolated, and utterly shattered. Additionally, I had an exam the following day, making the whole experience even more dreadful. I decided to give him some space, knowing that he often says things he does not mean, and I anticipated he would eventually clarify the situation since his last message was very brief. He communicated that he felt the relationship was not working and wished to end things. I considered flying back to my home country to resolve the issues, but he told me he would only grow to resent me more if I did that. I asked him if there was someone else involved, to which he responded in disgust, leaving me feeling abandoned since he ignored my numerous attempts to reach out and discuss matters. During my time in Europe, I placed the blame for our relationship's downfall on myself, struggling to cope with this sudden loss. I reflected on my actions, desperately trying to comprehend why he had changed so dramatically. After more than 2 months, I returned to our home country and decided to call him, asking if we could meet to talk. He told me he had conveyed everything he wanted to say in his final message and that there was no need for further discussion. He also mentioned that he had moved on, which shocked me immensely. I soon learned that he had started dating his manager soon after ghosting me, and everything suddenly clicked. He was avoiding me out of guilt. For context, he had always told me that he viewed his manager as a superior rather than a friend, which puzzled me when I noticed him frequently visiting casinos, where she paid for his entry, going to karaoke, and enjoying late-night drinks with her and her brother. She had also given him a perfume for his birthday, which struck me as unusual. She consistently bought him gifts and even attended a Coldplay concert with us, along with her brother. I was suspicious of her and inquired if she had any ulterior motives, but he insisted I should not be overly concerned, claiming he found her unattractive due to their 7-year age gap and the fact that she had just ended a long-term relationship with another female before pursuing a male colleague at his company. He expressed disgust at the situation. This felt like a profound betrayal to me. She was a smoker, which he disliked, and he had never been one to drink excessively. I am in utter shock and heartache, having suspected something was off with this manager for quite some time. I never imagined my boyfriend of 3 years would begin a relationship with her immediately after ending things with me via text. It feels as though my entire world has collapsed, and I continue to feel sick to my stomach. I cried incessantly and struggled to eat even a single meal each day, enduring several panic attacks after learning the truth. How could they be so lacking in shame? How could he discard a 3-year relationship for an older woman? She embodied everything he claimed to disdain. When I went to collect my belongings from his place, I discovered a bottle of alcohol in his room, which was completely out of character for him. Even when I confronted him about the woman he was seeing, he denied it, asserting that he owed me no explanations and there was no timeline for him to follow regarding moving on. He sent me hurtful messages and belittled me. He remarked that he had mentally checked out of our relationship long ago, which shocked me since just a short while before, he had been expressing his love for me and a desire to work through our challenges. We were each other's first loves, but the way he handled this situation makes me question whether he ever truly loved me. He has yet to apologize for anything and is now shamelessly dating his manager while I grieve the loss of our relationship and the time of my youth. This has all transpired within just a few days. I dedicated so much to him during our relationship, consistently abiding by my commitment to send him postcards from every city I visited in Europe, continually reaching out to him and striving to resolve our issues as we had promised each other. I only hope he comes to regret his actions someday. We had outlined our future together as I was set to graduate this year. I stood by him throughout his national military service, through job hunting struggles, and during his lowest moments. It is disheartening to see how he feels no remorse for his treatment of me. I never anticipated that long distance would dismantle our relationship, especially after spending nearly every day together in the weeks leading up to my departure for Europe. I truly believed he was the one. I held feelings for him for 7 years during my youth. To assist myself in moving on, I sent him a final lengthy message expressing my desire for him to have been my ultimate partner and urging him not to jeopardize everything he had worked hard for just for a fleeting moment of desire. I doubt I ever want to see him again, as I have not seen him since I left for Europe. Do you think he will ever come to regret losing this relationship? Is this just a rebound? I cannot comprehend how he could communicate and spend time with her daily while we were together, only to end things and immediately shift into a relationship with her once we were in a long-distance situation. It is utterly horrifying. I apologize for the length of this post. My thoughts are a chaotic mess.